I'm glad to see everybody out here. We got a good crowd. This obviously is a much bigger picture than what everybody wants to believe or everybody wants to see. We've got this literally right here could be a breaking point in the ecological system and everything else that goes in touch with it. The way that people eat, the way that you pursue medical care, health care in general. This affects so many different realms that we don't really get the full aspect of. My point today is not to tell you all the details and everything that goes into it, but just to really give you some of the bare bone basics about what you can start to do to educate yourself and seek out the bigger picture, start making the connections so that you can educate people around you. So what GMOs are, I just want to start that because some of you may not know, some of you may have just stumbled upon this event or you came with somebody else. Genetically modified organisms are not your typical standard hybridized products. You know, it's not taking 2 batches of corn and mixing them together to come up with a different feature. This is a process where they actually take genes from an entirely different species and inject them into a food product. For example, taking fish genes and putting them into a tomato. So imagine taking Labrador genes and injecting them into a human being. That's basically the equivalent of what you're looking at here. So we have no idea what the long-term effects that there's going to be, but these things are already in the environment. So here are the top 7 foods. Understand first and foremost, how many of you guys eat any processed foods whatsoever? Go ahead and raise your hand. Pretty much everybody here is going to some degree. You understand that 70% of processed foods right now contain genetically modified organisms. 70%. So it's pretty much everywhere that you go. Corn is the #1 crop. It's 88% is genetically modified in the United States. Most of this is used for animal feed. How many of you guys consume meat at restaurants or from a conventional grocery store? Most everybody here, you are consuming mostly meats that are eating nothing but genetically modified corn. Okay, BT is the main genetic modification that they use in the corn. It produces its own pesticide. So rather than having to spray pesticides on the crops, it's actually manufacturing it itself. We'll touch on that again here in a second. The second top is Roundup Ready soy. 93% of GMO soy is in the U.S. Hydrogenated oils, lecithin, emulsifiers, tocopherol, which is a form of vitamin E and proteins, all are used. All these protein supplements, protein bars, they all use soy. 93% of it in the United States is genetically modified. The next one, the number 3 is BT cotton. 94% of the cotton grown in the United States is now genetically modified. This is in everything from cottonseed oil, used in vegetable oils, used for cooking, things like French fries and potato chips and anything else that's fried. It's also used in margarine as well as a number of other things. Number 4 is alfalfa, which is the primary feed for dairy cows. So if you consume any kind of conventional dairy, conventional milk, conventional cheese, ice cream, you eat it in any restaurants that use dairy, you're getting genetically modified alfalfa. Number 5 is papaya. 75% from Hawaii is genetically modified to be resistant to a virus. Okay, number 6 is canola. 90% is genetically modified in the U.S. This is used, of course, for cooking oils and biofuels, which is we'll get into that again here in a second. Number 7 is sugar beets. 54% of the sugar used in the United States actually now comes from sugar beets. 90% of which is genetically modified. So the vast majority of sugar that you're consuming is from genetic modification. So here are the primary health concerns that come along with this from a health standpoint, okay? Number 1 is antibiotic resistant markers. You got to understand the way that antibiotics are used in the testing and the creation of genetic organisms. It's used basically as a marker gene, so that if you're trying to transfer a trait into a product, then what you're going to do is you're going to add in a antibiotic resistant gene, so that when you go back later and you test that bacteria or that organism to see if it dies by the use of the antibiotics, then you know if it didn't die that gene took. So the problem with that is now you have an antibiotic resistance built into the product, and you can't go back and remove that out again. So now we're transferring antibiotic resistance, which now that possibly goes in, and they're now starting to guess and theorize, well after the fact that we've been using it, that it will actually move those genes into the bacteria in your gut. Therefore, now you can start producing antibiotic resistance in your own body on an ongoing basis. Okay, huge issues that you should be taking care of before you ever put it on the market. Herbicide resistance. This is the next thing. We are now just being overwhelmed with super weeds that are now requiring more dangerous and additional new herbicides to combat, because of course they became Roundup ready because of all the Roundup ready crops, and so now the weeds aren't dying. So now we need all kinds of new stuff coming in as a result of that. This increased herbicide usage, especially Roundup, they're using heavier amounts. This is glyphosate, which inhibits an enzyme in plants involved in the synthesis of tyrosine, tryptophan, and phenylalanine. I know I'm throwing out a lot of big words here. Hold on, this is where you can go back and research this stuff later. I just want to tip you off on here, okay? Tryptophan is an essential amino acid. That means you have to get it from your diet, okay? Your body cannot produce tryptophan. Well, it's used for building proteins, and it's a precursor to serotonin and melatonin. All right, the next one is phenylalanine. It again is an essential amino acid found in breast milk with known analgesic and antidepressant effects. It is a precursor to the neuromodulator phenylethylamine, as well as dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine known as adrenaline, and melanin. Okay, so all of these chemicals, of course, are brain chemicals. They're neurotransmitters, which, of course, have massive implications when you look at where pharmaceuticals are going. You understand? Okay, so big connections here. Tyrosine is synthesized from phenylalanine, is used to synthesize proteins in the body as well. So, really, when you look at the grand scheme of things and you see all the ties, can you see a possible connection in the future to pharmaceuticals and pharmaceutical sales? Because now we're talking about inhibiting enzymes and products that you have to get in order for your brain to operate correctly. So now we get into the gene transfer possibilities. There's intestinal flora that are now producing pesticides and antibiotic resistance as a possibility, because when we take these genes, like I said, they can actually transfer into and be replicated in your own gut, in the bacteria, that now you have no way of getting rid of. So now your body, there is a possibility that your body can start to produce Bt toxin in and of itself. So now you're being constantly poisoned by Bt toxin. Now you've got GMOs used in current vaccines, if you guys have vaccinated your children. The current vaccines that use genetic modification right now are Hep B, rotavirus, and HPV, the Gardasil vaccine, which of course we've seen all kinds of media coverage on, because that one got rushed onto the scene and had all kinds of side effects, including narcolepsy, seizures, all kinds of neurological disorders. And then there's the big one. It's the complete unknown. It's the things that we don't know what's going to happen until it happens. It's the things that come 10 years down the road or 20 years down the road that we can't understand right now. We're just putting the pieces together now, but we don't really know the full effects until they've been out and about and been studied. So I want to put this one out here too. This is a huge Gulf Coast environmental concern. You can do all the research on this yourself. I just want to lay out the foundation for you and make a few connections that you can then start to seek out more information yourself. Number one, when you use more Roundup Ready crops, do you see that now you have more use of Roundup as the primary herbicide? And then you also have all these other resistant weeds, which means you need to use higher quantities of Roundup. Well, number two, the Roundup has negative impact. It's known to have negative impact on nitrogen-fixing bacteria in the soil, which means now the bacteria in the soil is dying and it's not able to get the nitrogen into the soil for the plants to grow. Okay, well, number three, nitrogen fertilizer is used to increase effectiveness of Roundup. It's actually being pushed to increase the effectiveness of the herbicide. As a result of that, fertilizer runoff goes into the 7 major rivers coming from 20 states that is now flowing in where? Right here into the Gulf of Mexico. 20 states herbicide use is running into the Gulf of Mexico. We have a big problem now. It's called the dead zone. Anybody heard of it? We have this dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico that's covering, as of right now, 6,000 to 7,000 square miles and is growing as a result of these fertilizers, nitrogen fertilizers, going into the environment. Now we have an oil spill. What chemical do they use? Corexit. Guess what it does? It furthers the problem. It increases the nitrogen even further. As a result of that, we have algae bloom continuing to increase. We're having algae that's going to grow, and nothing else will be able to grow in this dead zone. Nothing else. No other life, no fish, no oysters, no shrimp, no anything that goes back into the economy. Nothing but algae will grow in this zone. Well, oddly enough, you ready for this one? Monsanto, they are heavily investing in the algae fuel industry. Investment in Sapphire Energy, massive investment in a San Diego-based company, Sapphire Energy, along with $100 million in corporate welfare grants and loan guarantees from the U.S. government. While efforts to increase domestic oil continue to be blocked in the Gulf of Mexico. So we're stopping oil production on a routine basis while money is being dumped into using algae for fuel. This is a bit of a problem. The major contributors into this, major investors, U.S. government, BP, Exxon, General Motors, GE, and many others are heavily invested now in biofuels, and tax credits continue to go out. These are things that aren't being talked about openly. They're not being talked about on a wide-scale basis. I think we need to start talking about it because we are at the epicenter. The people that are doing things out in Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, this isn't their backyard that we're talking about here. This is our backyard. This is our coast that we have to protect. So, looking at the trust concerns, for those of you who might think this is just a little bit of, conspiracy theory and, that we're all a bunch of hippies out here that are discussing these things. Guys, this is just raw science. This is raw fact. These are documented truths. I just want to lay out for you a few of the reasons why I have a problem trusting Monsanto. Number one, they're guilty of false advertising on multiple occasions. The U.S. EPA has found Monsanto guilty of scientific fraud on multiple occasions for falsifying data and statements that has been verified numerous times. They produced DDT as a safe herbicide that then was found to be one of the most disastrous chemicals in the history of our nation. They produced the now banned Agent Orange, which any Vietnam veteran is fully aware of, known to cause birth defects, cancer, neurological disorders, and death, which was used and contaminated over 1 million Vietnamese citizens and over 100,000 U.S. troops during Vietnam, 10,000 of which have filed suits in the U.S. Disabled Veterans Administration to try and get coverage and compensation, which has most overwhelmingly been rejected. Right here in Alabama, in Anniston, they poisoned the community with PCBs while concealing and lying about it all along the way. They knew this was happening. It was literally running in a river in their backyard where churches were baptizing people. It's involved in the manufacture of MSG and partially hydrogenated vegetable oil shortening, which many of you guys know is a problem in our food. Through acquisition, produced NutraSweet, which later they sold to Pfizer Corporation. They produced recombinant bovine growth hormone used to artificially increase milk production in cattle by 15% or more, which as a result has had disastrous implications on the dairy industry and the cows that had to suffer through it. They later sold this to Eli Lilly, another pharmaceutical company, which produces vaccines. They produced saccharin for Coca-Cola. They produced Pfizer's Celebrex, which was under the G.D. Searle subsidiary, which was headed up by Donald Rumsfeld at one point. And of course, Celebrex was one of those in the realm with Vioxx that killed and maimed we're talking thousands and thousands of people. There were over 50,000 people that were injured by Vioxx. And we're still seeing the fallout from that today. Celebrex is right in that category. They routinely sue farmers for intellectual property infringement when their crop becomes contaminated by GMO crops that are blowing pollen into their fields, and then they send in the secret seed police to test their fields and then sue them, shutting them down. This is routinely happening. Donald Rumsfeld, don't need to say anything else about that right there. But other numerous examples of revolving doors all along the way. Monsanto is buying up seed companies at a rapid pace. They're buying up seed companies, the largest distributors of seeds all over the world, so that they have a control of seed. Their Bollgard cotton has gone in and decimated India's cotton industry, leading to massive suicide increases because their farmers start producing this seed and then lose everything that they have because of the high cost and poor turnouts, and then they commit suicide because they feel that's their only option. When they've been doing this for centuries, they've been practicing farming of cotton. Similar Order 81, which was enacted by Paul Bremer, this one especially just irritates me, in the new Iraq. After the Iraq War, he went in and he put in Order 81, which basically forced farmers all across the country to purchase nothing but Monsanto seed and causing prices to skyrocket. And now Iraqi farmers are not able to practice the farming policies that they've been enacting in that Mesopotamia region for centuries. They're instead forced to use GMO seeds and are now routinely going out of business as well. Monsanto did not, but of course this guarantees United States profits out of Iraq for decades to come until something changes, of course. Monsanto, however, there's rumors that they purchased Blackwater. I don't know if you guys have heard that one. It's a secret ops, very secretive organization. It's a mercenary organization. This, however, is not true. Just in case you guys, were wondering about it, it's not true. They're only on their client list. Nations of Hungary, France, and Peru have taken stand against Monsanto, not allowing their crops to come into the country. Just shortly ago, China actually shut down and destroyed 3 shipments of Monsanto crops coming into the country. So thankfully somebody is starting to catch on to this. Huge ties between big names. Start looking at these ties. Monsanto and the Bill Gates Foundation, with of course massive donations from Warren Buffett, are working to promote genetic modified crops into Africa. As of right now, a lot of the African nations are refusing to accept aid in the form of genetically modified crops. But they're pushing to try and get genetic modified crops in, and as a staple, overwhelming the nation of, or the continent rather, of Africa. And the Gates Foundation is heavily invested backwards in Monsanto, purchasing 23 million shares in 2010. Okay, so basically what you have is you have a philanthropic organization that's donating Microsoft money back into the community, to do philanthropic work and vaccinating children all over the globe. But in the process, they know that profits are coming back through their investments in Monsanto. Okay, then the Gates Foundation pledged $10 billion to vaccinate in Africa and other areas. The beneficiaries: Sanofi, GlaxoSmithKline, Merck, Pfizer, and Novartis. So, just looking at a couple of these, and you look at those examples, I want you to just take a second and think about the examples that we have through history showing us where things were considered safe and now they're not. You can probably name some of them: aspartame, saccharin, Vioxx, Celebrex, DDT. You name all these things and you see that these ties consistently come back to the same sources over and over and over again. The agribusiness, the pharmaceutical companies that unfortunately profit the sicker you are. So the bottom line is, you've got to start looking at this stuff and seeing where is your money going, where are your affiliations being made. So what we can do individually, these are the things we can do individually. Number one, start buying organic seed stores. Start supplying yourself with seeds while you still have the availability, while you can still get them. Start saving up seeds, because in some countries it's now illegal. such as Iraq. Learn to farm on your property. If you guys don't have a farm, start setting aside some ground and start cultivating the soil. Cultivating soil, if you've done it yet, is not an easy task. You can't just dig up some Alabama red dirt and start putting stuff in the ground. So you got to start getting your property ready. Build rainwater collection systems, just in case something goes south there. Purchase sustainable water cleaning systems. There's units on the market where you can literally take pond water, or you can take toilet water and squeeze it through a filter in your hand, and you've got clean drinking water. Make sure that you have this stuff available to you. Purchase only organic produce and naturally raised meats. Guys, this is probably the biggest thing, and I understand somebody's going to be talking on the socioeconomics of this later, but you guys really have the power. The consumer has the power because we control what we purchase. And if you simply put it back on the shelf and don't purchase it, they don't have profits. Why do you think the GMO labeling is going south? That's why they're trying to beat it, because they know if you know it's in the food, then you're not going to buy it and they cannot secure their profits. That's why this is such a big issue. Okay, so purchase only organic produce and naturally raised meats. Know your sources. Support responsible producers only. There's a lot of organic companies even that are not being responsible, that are even pushing behind the scenes to protect Monsanto's rights, to protect their intellectual property, as they say. Purchase only whole foods, because if it's not processed, you don't have to worry about what's in it. If you know you're buying a head of organic broccoli, you're buying a head of organic broccoli. You don't need to buy crackers and other packaged foods. Stick to the whole foods. They're better for you anyways. Reduce chemical and drug exposure as much as possible, because your body is a toxic bucket. Every single time that you put something in your body, it collects, and it builds, and it builds, and it builds. And the number one scourge of our time right now is toxicity. There is no doubt about it. We've got to get the toxins out of our environment, out of our bodies, but that starts with what you put in your mouth intentionally. So if you're taking medications and you're eating things that you know you shouldn't be eating, you're doing it to yourself. There's nobody else to blame but yourself. So you've got to start dealing with that. Then build your immune system and your innate resistance. Everything that you can do. Support the function of your nervous system. Exercise, eat right, get out the chemicals. All these things build up the integrity of your body so that you're able to withstand these things better. There's a reason why some kids develop autism and some kids don't. It's because of the burdens that they already have on their bodies. So build your body's integrity in every possible way you know how, because things are not in the immediate future going to get better until policy changes. How can we protect our community? Push for GMO labeling laws. Show up for events like this. Get other people involved. Adequate safety testing and independent testing before admission to market. Guys, it just doesn't work when nobody but the companies putting the product out are the ones doing the testing and the interests that protect them. We have to have independent testing. The entire scientific community is in shambles because it's the very money that is in turn going to profit from it that are paying for the studies to be done. How much is science worth when it's directed? We've got to have honest and credible science. And then support businesses that eliminate use of GMOs and promote organic standards strongly. I'm talking strongly, that will not allow it in their usage. So again, know your companies and look beyond the shroud and really study and find out before you see who you trust and who you're going to put your efforts into. The last thing is educate and collaborate. Get with the people that you know, get with the people that you love and you care about. Work with them, help them, build along these lines so that you can start to protect your family and get things moving in the right direction.